Season 2 of Daredevil. This is in 4K on the TV over here to your left. We'll start there, and then we'll kick off the panel.
Would you believe it if I said I missed you?
No.
I need your help, Matthew. You're the only person I can trust.
No, sweetheart. You don't break into my house and then talk to me about trust. What do you want from me?
You fight better than anyone I know. And I have information. The Yakuza never left.
That's impossible. I drove them out of New York City.
No, you didn't. They just hibernated and watched you take out all of their enemies. Now, New York is ripe for the taking.
If we do this, nobody dies. Do you understand?
Hungry?
Every time I walk up those stairs, I wonder if today's the day you're dead in your living room. There are horrible things happening in this city. I'm done apologizing to you for who I am. The city needs me.
This isn't your city anymore.
My way isn't working. What if that never has?
The battle has begun, Matthew. There's nothing we can do but fight.
Hold the hand. You cannot stop what we have started. The rising is coming.
You've been working out, by the way. I appreciate that.
Wow.
That looks amazing. Please make it like 50 episodes per season. That can be an intensive 10 episodes.
Well, you're going to see the first episode tonight, so hold on to your horses. So my name's Eric. I head up social media here at Netflix. I'm happy to introduce Cindy Holland, who heads up original series for us. Cindy's a 14-year vet at Netflix, so if you have questions, she's got answers. Next up is Charlie here. Charlie Cox is our Daredevil, of course. You may recognize him from The Theory of Everything or Boardwalk Empire, or many of his turns on the stage. And of course, he's our Daredevil. Then we have Marco Ramirez, who is an executive producer and co-showrunner. Marco worked on a number of shows, including Orange is the New Black Season 1, which is another Netflix show you may have seen. And then finally we have Doug Petrie, again, an executive producer and co-showrunner who worked on Buffy the Vampire Slayer for 5 years before joining Daredevil. All right. So, as I'm sure you guys remember, on January 6th, we turned Netflix live in India and in many other countries around the world. Cindy, a question for you. How did that change how you think about making TV?
Well, we've been planning to become a global service for quite some time. So we started the original series initiative in 2011. We weren't sure which territories we would be in over the coming years, so we did not acquire rights to House of Cards or Orange is the New Black globally at that time, but rather in a select number of countries. But by 2013, any of the series that we were commissioning or producing ourselves, we retained global rights to. So by the time we launched globally or close to globally in January, we had a large supply of global series, original series available for a global audience, including all the Marvel shows.
So, looking back before season 1 of Daredevil came out, What was it that made the Marvel deal for these 5 shows the right deal for Netflix?
Well, Marvel have been really successful at reinvigorating their canon of characters through the series of Iron Man and other films, culminating in Avengers, and they were seeking to do something similar in television, but were very focused on the street level heroes in their canon. So Daredevil being prominent among them. So we had a conversation in 2013 about extending their strategy into film, television, doing something on Netflix that they weren't able to do in their movies or in other television shows that they've done, which is to kind of a PG-16, sort of grittier, more violent version of the Marvel characters that could exist.
How did you guys think about the PG-16 element of it all? There's definitely an expectation about the superhero film and TV show. How did that work into your writer's room?
I think the version of the show that we wanted to make was always kind of right in that sweet spot. So it was never felt like we were trying to retrofit anything or trying to back into a parking space that was already there. It really felt like some of our favorite runs of the comic were some of the darker, grittier runs of the comic. So it felt aesthetically like that wasn't really too much of an issue in any way. It actually felt encouraging, I think.
Yeah, we never, tried to make it rougher than it needed to be or pull back in any way. As Cindy says, Matt Murdock lives on a street level, bloody knuckled. He settles things with his hands, and so this idea of pushing that in a way that felt organic with the character and the world we wanted to create, it was just right.
Yeah, he sells it with his hands in back alleys, in dark back alleys. It's hard to do that in a PG world, so it actually just felt kind of quite right.
And for you, Charlie, what attracted you to playing Daredevil? I mean, there's a lot of history to this character that can be a little scary.
It was. Obviously, it's a huge challenge. I find the character so complex and interesting, and one of the ways I like to describe Matt Murdock is he's a bit like he's a walking contradiction. He's like us, like humans, like everyone you simultaneously can believe 2 completely opposite things, and it feels bizarre, but that does seem to be part of the human experience, and so as the more complex these characters are, particularly if they're also superheroes, the more relatable they end up being. And I think if you're going to make a superhero television show, particularly a television show, because of course you're trying to engage an audience for much longer periods of time, 13 now 26 hours rather than 2 hours or 4 hours, it is important that those central characters are relatable. And so it was, just on the one hand, it was just a wonderful challenge, and then the other thing is I got to read the first 2 scripts of the first season, and I thought they were so sophisticated and interesting and sinister in all the right places, and unlike any superhero show that I'd previously seen or read.
How did you prepare to play Daredevil?
It's really, it felt like a tall order initially. There was so much that I had to that was new to me. Obviously the blindness, which is multifaceted. There's what happens to his eyes when he looks at you and talks to you. What that looks like and feels like. Obviously there's all the techniques that someone who is blind, or someone who, in Daredevil's case, is pretending to operate like a regular blind person has to learn, like a cane technique and how to find something on a table and all that kind of stuff. I had to do the martial arts training and I had to get a gym membership and start working out. I used an American accent on the show, so that was another thing. And then of course there's 60 plus years of Daredevil comic book history to read overnight. Just become familiar with the history of the character and make sure that the Matt Murdock that exists in this show is reminiscent and valid. And based on at least some of the great beloved comics.
So Daredevil, of course, was a film before being a series, and I'm curious, what is it about TV that really fits Daredevil really well?
Well, there's a couple of things. I think that Matt's world, Daredevil's world, both the relationships in his everyday working life as well as the fights themselves, there's an intimacy to it, a street level intimacy. It's a very New York show. And Marco and I are both New Yorkers, and in many ways, and we wanted to capture that kind of in-your-face. It's not to compare it to the Marvel Cinematic Universe, the Avengers, which are movies we love, but they're kind of like gods. They're up in the sky, literally, you know. And Matt also literally has his feet on the ground and is settling things with his knuckles. So this idea of a smaller, more intimate world and having 13 episodes to deal with cause and effect and moral consequences, it feels like exactly where our Hell's Kitchen and our Matt Murdock should live.
I think I would say TV is a place for character, and certainly on Netflix, they further that tradition and that legacy. And so their shows, the shows that Netflix makes are largely rooted in character, and it's never, for us at least in the writers' room, it's never really about building to an image from the comics or like, oh, we have to get to this spectacle moment. It's always about rooting that in character, so it always feels like it's about real people going through real struggles. And I think at least that's one of the reasons why the audience has been so large and so supportive. Because they see that and they acknowledge that.
Knowing that Netflix viewers watch in a very different format, they might watch 2-3 episodes in a row, and there's commercials, and they can watch on their own schedule. How did that impact how you laid out the story?
Well, we really loved and embraced the 13 hours. Just felt so very right for this. And yeah, in terms of the way to approach it, we did take a kind of an aerial view of looking down at all 13 hours. But in terms of one of the notes that we get from Netflix all the time when we're building a story and looking at it and how do we do this, always what they will say to us is, do we have enough what we call character moments, or are the characters really front and center in all of this? So that's always on our minds.
And Cindy, we have this culture at Netflix of freedom and responsibility. How does that extend to a creative team that doesn't necessarily work at the company?
Well, the goal is to extend our culture to the creative teams, and just as we believe that every person functions and delivers at their best when they are accountable and responsible for producing and for doing the job. And we're not the experts in storytelling; these guys are. And so we feel that responsibility is best left in their hands, and that they'll be most motivated to deliver on the promise when it's all up to them.
How did you guys feel having that, that power, but also that responsibility? Reminds me of another superhero line.
It's quite wonderful to have to feel like there's an infrastructure that has that kind of that we have that support behind you. Just run with it, run with the ball, run hard, run fast. And it's exactly what Cindy just said. That support kind of affects the quality of the work, and I think it allows us to do the very best work we can. That's what I would say about it.
I think we, speaking for Marco and myself and the entire creative team, we love having responsibility. It's a burden, but it's a burden that we so happily carry. There are literally times when I'll drive into work and I pull into my parking space and it's like, we get to tell the story of Matt Murdock. We're the luckiest guy. We're the lucky guys. We're the lucky ones. All of us. So there's that. And then in terms of freedom, again, it's the story of Daredevil. It has to be risk-based, and either Marco or myself or one of the writers or Charlie or someone will come up with an idea that just kind of pops in this way that you go like, and we look at each other, can we do that? And it's like, we can do that, and that's the thing we want to see, and that's when it gets a little magical. I hesitate to use that word, but it really, when it happens, and we've all experienced it in the writer's room and on the set and hopefully on screen, it's really special. It's really exciting.
So you both worked in the writer's room on season 1, and there was about a year between when that came out and now where we are with season 2. Did you learn anything in that time? Did it impact your process in the creation of season 2?
I think we take a lot of pride in the work we did season 1, and we take a lot of pride in the show that we made. I think that the big takeaway, at least for myself, was after the show launched, after season 1 launched, I think we both realized how keen our audience was, how sophisticated, how smart, how willing they were to observe the smallest nuance. They embraced all the elements of the show that may have been considered risky, from any other standpoint. The violence, the deep relationships, the sophisticated crime stories. So we, if nothing else, we just felt encouraged by the audience. I think was my big learning curve takeaway was just make it complicated, make it gritty.
Yeah, I think that doing 13 episodes and getting no audience feedback and only having yourself, it's a little bit creatively like sending out a message in a bottle, and you do your best, you try your hardest, and you hope for the best, and we were so pleasantly surprised by the audience response. It's like, we liked the message, we want more, and the subtler, smaller aspects of the show, as opposed to the pyrotechnics. People loved the fights, people loved the stunts. The hallway fight in episode 2 is something people still validly talk about, but it's all these smaller, more human moments that we kind of laced in there. So we felt like we were extending a reward and a love letter to our fans, and they wrote one back, and that just made season 2. Let's do that.
And our mantra in the writers' room was always, let's just make the show we watch.
Yeah.
And that, at the end of the day, was a wonderful freedom to have.
It's a good strategy.
Yeah.
So Charlie, speaking of fans, you've been traveling around promoting the show around the world, and you've seen fans all over the world for Daredevil. How are they similar? How are they different? What do you see?
The Daredevil fans are a unique bunch.
I think we have a few here.
Yeah, the thing that I like to joke about is that when I go on Netflix press tour, often I'm there with other shows, and so there are fans for Orange is the New Black, House of Cards, Daredevil, Bloodline, all the other great shows. But you can always tell the Daredevil fans because they're costumed. they're dressed like me, or Wilson Fisk, or what have you. So, it's when I was cast in this role. Unlike if you were to be cast in an original television show that doesn't have a history, that doesn't have familiar characters from a comic book source or from other films or television shows or whatever it is, then people have to kind of wait to see what they're going to get before they make a judgment. It's not true when you're cast as a Marvel character, because people have opinions and people love this character and they've grown up with this character and he's immensely important to people. And I think for certain fans, the announcement of we're making Daredevil TV show is very exciting and very nerve-wracking at the same time, because the pain of it being wrong, going badly, is great. is as great as the excitement of it going well. And so there was I felt very anxious and nervous to play the part and for the show to be released and all these kind of things. And the response that I've had from meeting fans since, of course, has been fantastic. For the most part, they've all been really, really pleased with the results.
Deservedly so. Cindy, another question for you, which is, now that we've released Daredevil season 1 and we've released a bunch of other shows all around the world, what have you learned about viewing tastes around the world? What have you learned about viewing habits?
Well, I think that what we find is that great characters and great storytelling is admired equally around the world. That being said, we also are investing a lot of energy and money and time into bringing some stories that might otherwise go untold on the world stage to our global audience, by investing in local language, original series, which we have Club de Cuervos in Mexico, we have Marseille coming up in France, we have a series announced in Italy and Germany, and many more to come around the world. And the most exciting thing about it is the global audience is not homogenous, and what Netflix allows us to do is hyper target otherwise very niche series and titles to the audiences who will love them all around the world, wherever they may happen to live. So, Winter on Fire is an Oscar-nominated documentary about the Ukrainian uprising, and for the first time, it was available globally at launch, everywhere we operate, and anybody who has an interest in the subject matter, could see it at the same moment in time. In traditional distribution, it might take years, or it might never be available for a lot of audiences in many, many countries around the world.
I want to ask a little bit about season 2. So Daredevil, of course, is the center, but we also have Elektra and the Punisher. Why did you guys select those 2 characters?
It felt organic. It felt like those 2 characters could, after looking at season 1, it did feel like Elektra and the Punisher kind of existed in the shadows in the alleys, in the back alleys of Hell's Kitchen. It felt aesthetically like these characters were both inevitable and just, they were just inevitable. So that was really, I think, one of the major factors. The second one I would say is it was about what journey we wanted to take Matt Murdock on this season, and what characters were the right ones to kind of get him there.
Yeah, the only thing we love more than Matt Murdock is torturing Matt Murdock, and we thought, at the end of season 1, clearly he's won this kind of stunning rise up from nothing to becoming Daredevil victory. So he's going to enjoy that victory for the briefest amount of time possible before these 2 kind of, this is well known from the canon, these kind of doppelgangers, these kind of, if you want to be fancy about it, Jungian shadow figures who are like, I'm like you. Elektra's like, I'm like you, Matt Murdock. And he's like, no, you're not. And Frank Castle says, oh yeah, we're on the same side. We hate criminals. And Matt Murdock, hey, wait a minute. So I think that the fact that he created himself to become a hero simply by his own volition, his own kind of, it's not a coincidence that season 1 opens with him in a confessional, and his Catholicism and his sense of morality is like, I'm going to fix Hell's Kitchen. And then these 2 characters who very much feel like they've been lingering in the shadows show up and go, great, you called? And he has to deal with that.
And for you, Charlie, how was it working with Jon Bernthal and Elodie Young?
Yeah, that was really fantastic. I mean, obviously when the first season premiered and to such a good response, we probably were able to enjoy that for about 11 minutes before the impending doom of having to kind of do it again and try and up the ante and raise the stakes and all those things. So first of all, learning that Punisher and Elektra were going to make an appearance, and then of course that Jon Bernthal was going to play this iconic role was such a huge confidence booster, I think, for all of us, because I actually genuinely can't think of anyone who could play that role better than him. He's fantastic casting, such a great actor, such a true professional, and I've been admiring him from a distance for a while. And then Elodie was extraordinary because she came from nowhere. I was unaware of her previous work. She's relatively new to the industry, and she rocked up and she grabbed the bull by the horns and she stamped her own authority on the role, and she had great courage and great freedom within it, and she created with these guys. They created what I think is going to be a very memorable Elektra.
So these guys are a very select group of people that are going to get to see the first episode before anybody else. Do you have any advice for them, or do you want to tell them anything before they go in and watch?
Feel free to applaud and laugh loudly. Bear in mind, speaking for all of us, we're with you. We're fans too. So, speaking to you not as journalists, but as fans, we want what you want, and we really hope that we got it right. And if you like it, which we really hope you do, just remember there's 12 more. That this is this is the beginning of the ride, and we really hope you enjoy it.
So now I'll open up to you guys. Do you guys have questions for this crew? Go ahead.
Okay, so in season 1, the build-up to the Kingpin was immense. He was always referred to as the employer for a couple of episodes before he
Yes.
was revealed, and that was brilliant. And as a fan of, I've watched the Kingpin as a villain because he's been in the Spider-Man comics before and stuff. He's always been this bad guy, but through the first season, his motivation seemed to do good for Hell's Kitchen, which made me root for him a little more than Daredevil, actually. But and that was the thing, that was the hook that kept me going for the first season throughout, to see what happens to him at the end. And is it the same thing that's going to happen in season 2? Is the build-up the same for the antagonist? What can you say about that?
I would just say that in a weird way is the way that that version of Wilson Fisk kind of wanted to be introduced into the world. Was he was a secret kind of criminal mastermind in the shadows. And some of the fun for us in introducing Elektra and introducing Frank this season, as you'll see tonight, is we tried to stay true to the characters and have them introduce themselves to the world of Daredevil as only they could and as only they would want to be introduced. So Frank's introduction is very different from a Wilson Fisk. Wilson Fisk is kind of in the shadows until he has to not be. Frank comes in, as Doug has said many times, Frank comes in, shoots you in the head, says goodbye, and keeps going. Like there's no conversation, there's no discussion.
So you've taken the complete opposite route now. He's just going to be out there.
Well, but it's not by design. It's mostly just true to the character of Frank Castle. How does Frank Castle want to introduce himself to Hell's Kitchen and the audience? And so as writers, we thought about that a lot. And the same with Elektra. How does she want to introduce herself as a character? And just trying to honor the legacy of who the characters are in the comics, I think.
Yeah, and just add to that, if I may, a little bit as well. Is I think that although what you said is correct, Wilson Fisk's motives are confusing.
Yeah.
And you kind of bizarrely, against your better judgment, root for him in the first season, and all those things. He really is in the comics and also in our show. He is a villain. He's a super villain. And whether or not he believes he's doing the right thing or not is irrelevant. What he's doing is, he's stepping over innocent people in order to do what he believes is right, and that's not okay. What's different about this season, I think, is that Frank Castle isn't a villain. He's an anti-hero, and there is a big difference. And so, really, what he presents is it's not like, well, this is the new big bad for our second season of this show. It's more that he shows up, and initially Matt Murdock would like to pigeonhole him in the same way that he did Wilson Fisk and say, here's another bad guy, let's take care of him, let's bring him to justice. And what the world then says, or Hell's Kitchen then says, is, well, hold on a second, he's kind of like you. And that is an immensely frightening thing for Matt Murdock, for Daredevil, to acknowledge, because one, if that is true, he has to accept two things. One, that he is responsible for the creation of someone like Frank Castle. And two, maybe even more scarily, he should then consider hanging up his Daredevil suit and never doing it ever again. And so I guess what I'm trying to say is the emotional journey surrounding Wilson Fisk and Frank Castle for Matt is very, very different. The second season is much more blurry. It's not as black and white.
So I continue, anybody? Yeah. Okay. There are a lot of Easter eggs in the first season that are throwbacks to things that, maybe somebody who's read the comic books or watched the comics has something to do. In another interview that I was watching on YouTube, you said that the suit goes through a lot of changes. And are there any Easter eggs to the old or the original black and yellow suit of Daredevil, or any fun that's thrown back to that we can expect? And if you can share one without spoiling anything.
It's like if you can get me pregnant by not getting me pregnant. Unfortunately, we can't share one without spoiling anything.
Okay.
We can say that the character and the look of the show and everything is kind of evolving organically, and we never try to force Easter eggs into the world. We try to just build the best story we can, and then everyone is always on high alert for I don't necessarily call them Easter eggs, but like. Yeah.
References.
Any way to be able to reference that there is an existence outside of this world, just stuff for the fans, stuff that we would eat up and we would love. So sometimes that stuff comes from, an executive on any end of the spectrum, or an actor, or one of us, or one of the writers, or anyone. Like, it really can come from anywhere. But we try to build the story first, and then be able to hang those, lights on that stuff.
It's fun. It's fun because with the Easter egg stuff, whether it's intentional or sometimes unintentional. I mean, my favorite one this season, I think, I'm pretty certain it was unintentional. It was kind of, it happened by design. It's fun because the whole crew, 150 people, all get behind it. Well, what's interesting about the film is that if you look at the comic books, if you look at the, from 1964 to present day, the character and also the tone of those comic books changes immensely. There are many great runs that tonally represent the film quite. The film represents them quite well. I actually enjoyed many aspects of the film. I do, however, think that the most beloved runs, the writers and illustrators who are best remembered over the years and have stood the test of time with Daredevil fans, I think our show pays homage to them more than that film does, if I may say that. I do think that the Daredevil in general, the source material suits the show really well, or vice versa, whichever way.
Cindy, I have a question for you. Given that you have so much data around what works, what doesn't, what works with folks who watch Daredevil or other shows, how involved or how much feedback do you give into the creative or the editorial process? Given that you have such a lot of data around preferences, tastes, what works, right?
Well, when we hire storytelling teams, we really give them the freedom to tell the story they want to tell. So, we're not using data to intrusively tell them, fix this or ramp that action here, or gee, this character is most popular. We actually don't give much feedback in terms of data. Like, for example, in season 1, I don't think we told you anything about any real data to speak of, and I think that's purposeful because we want the vision of the creators, and we want the story to be what it should be, not what anyone outside of the process desires it to be.
We've never gotten a note from Netflix saying the data indicates this, so could you have this character appear more or less or anything. I think that's what's fun and scary about our industry, is that even with all the data at Netflix's command, you still do it by your gut instinct, and that's the magic of storytelling, and that's the fun of storytelling, that's the terror of storytelling, because how do you know you're right? And you don't until tonight.
Since you're now a global thing that happened, do rating change between region to region? Like, for example, in Middle East, in my country, it's like this show is rating like 16 not PG. Do you have other ratings for other countries, like, or other for stuff and censorship for some scenes or stuff like that, or it's a global thing?
Mm-hmm. Well, our intent is to preserve the creative intent of the team. So there's one version of Daredevil that exists. We are an internet television network. We're not a national broadcaster, so we're not subject to the same level of local regulations and rating systems. However, we do we are willing to follow applicable local laws, and there are countries in which we do have ratings, and we will rate the content according to what the local ratings organization would deem that particular content. We also have, in some countries, we have PIN code protection, depending on what the local regulations are that apply to us.
Yeah, as you know, because in our Arab countries, like a kiss scene is wow, it's forbidden, which is hideous to do. But like something in too much intense, so for some audience it will be like, you can't show it to the kids or to his wife, the conservative area over there. So beside the government or the laws itself, would you consider the audience feedbacks and what they say about the show, and can we take this scene, or would you do that in the future, like content?
Well, obviously, audience feedback is important to us, but our guiding light is what's the creative intent for the storytellers, and you know, by and large throughout the world, that's the version that consumers really want to see.
Building on what he was asking, now you guys are deploying the entire season in one go. So how does that, and you're deploying it to over 180 countries. So how does that change the writing process for a season?
So if I understand you correctly,
Yeah.
how does the number of countries or the...
And also the fact that you're deploying the entire season in one go, you're not going episode by episode.
I think to break down your question, it's much more, we do pay a lot of attention to, okay, you know, we look at each other and go, okay, we got 13 hours, you know, and we think of a 3-act structure, and we think of Matt Murdock and what's the story that we want to tell. I don't think that we think outside of our own, you know, nerdy impulses in terms of what we want to deliver. We don't think we don't think of any culture outside of the culture of Hell's Kitchen and what's happening to this guy, and we hope that translates all over the world. We don't really consciously think, well, this is, I think you would just freeze up creatively. And we put a lot of faith in the idea that the true international language is violence.
I would also add, just to that, I would also add that I think one of the benefits of having the show take place in Hell's Kitchen and actually shooting it in New York is that because we're shooting it in such an international city, we never have to actually worry about, like, oh, how will we make sure that everything is represented in this place, because it is by its very nature so international. So, so certainly in terms of the stories we're telling this season, it's just by nature of the fact that it's in New York that the story feels, it's like all roads lead to Hell's Kitchen. Not even New York, just all roads lead to Hell's Kitchen. So it's about this collision of all these different worlds that are coming here. And I think some of the global appeal may be in that, but it's not like we had to artificially kind of make the show feel more global because we're just benefiting from that.
But do you guys prefer having to deploy the entire season in one go, or going about it episode by episode? What do you prefer?
Oh, we love it. The idea of doing the entire season for so many reasons. There is something, it's weirdly perfect, the 13 hours that we're given in season 1 and season 2. It just feels like the right size to tell this street level story of consequences. And to do it all in one shot just feels very right, and it's very liberating as opposed to say a network procedural where it's the bad guy of the week and the case is wrapped up and then you're done, and then next week it's as if nothing had happened before. We don't think that's like life, and we don't think it's like the drama that we enjoy. We love that if Matt makes a choice, and sometimes he makes questionable choices, that there are consequences to that, and that one of the things we learned from season 1 is that the audience is so acutely attuned, so sensitive to every little moment that we're doing, that we can have something happen in an episode early on, and we can leave it alone and just kind of thread it through, and then have it blow up in his face 4 or 5 episodes later, and that feels so much better. It just, you feel like you have more room to move. It's very nice.
I would say, I mean, I think we've both done it both ways, and it's just a different approach to the art form. As from my writer brain, the way that I could probably try to describe it is like it's like writing a hit single, or being able to step back and say, like, what is this concept album, and then being able, it's not that one is better than the other. It's just about, as long as we were conscious, and we were at the very beginning, like, we're talking about 13 episodes as one big movement, and we knew that's what we were doing early on. There's a way to absolutely be able to benefit from the Netflix launch at once model, and we hope the audience will feel that.
Do you think this is going to be like the future of going about TV shows? Like even House of Cards gets deployed in one go. So do you think this is kind of the future? But for most TV shows, like the entire season getting deployed in one go?
I hope it is.
Yeah.
I mean, from our perspective, I hope so, because we love delivering something this large all at once. What do you think?
Well, we certainly think it's our future. And, you know, we found that consumers really want to have choice, and they really want to be able to watch either episode by episode or, you know, all 13 starting at 12:01 Pacific time tonight, in case of Daredevil season 2. And we want to reward those audiences.
Since Daredevil came out last year, it's before the January announcement of Netflix coming to so many countries. What is your opinion on the fact that in most of these countries, Daredevil was consumed through piracy, through torrent downloads, and other means through the internet? What's your opinion on that? Because it's like our exposure, most of us in India, be it Daredevil or Sense8 or House of Cards, Orange is the New Black, most of the consumption came through illegal means, and the first thing that any of us, the minute Netflix came in, was just went to the library and added all these shows to our playlists, our ad list, because it's good quality content. But our medium of consuming it for the past years, has been through these other possible options. And were you aware of that? How did you take to the fact that it wasn't available in a country like this, but still there were people that were watching it and appreciating it without having legitimate access?
Yeah, well, look, it's certainly clear that piracy exists around the world, and our view is that Netflix is a very good antidote to piracy, and our goal is to provide a really high-quality, low-cost service around the world with a lot of original exclusive content. So now that we are a mostly global service, we're excited to continue launching new series and new seasons, and if there happen to be existing fan bases that we can now serve fully, then we're happy to do so.
Sameer, I think you answered that yourself when you were speaking to me yesterday.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So do you talk about it? Because that's the way it happened for me. Is I was following Daredevil and Sense8, and my fiance is more into House of Cards and a lot of other shows, and it was just that we would wait for every episode to just come out and find a way to watch it. And then a friend of mine in office had an account because he was in the US for a while, and then in office during the lunch break it would be, let's watch another episode because you have access to Netflix, because you have a US account. And it's just, what I want to say is it's actually great to have this content now just right there with us. Speaking of that, any information on the second season for Sense8? I know we're drifting from Daredevil, but that's another one of my favorite shows. So
they've just begun filming in Berlin for season 3. So
yeah,
coming soon.
Charlie, for you, first of all, how did you feel when you were when you knew that you were going to put on the iconic mask for Daredevil? What were your apprehensions, and what was the strain that you went through physically, of course, to pull off this character on screen?
Well, what was fun about the costume in this show was that I had an entire season to prepare for it, and what that meant literally was that by the time episode 13 came of the first season, myself and the 150 crew members who were on set every single day, everyone had been talking about it and wondering what it was going to look like and speculating and looking at the comics and thinking, will it be like this, will it be like that? And so the moment that I came on set for the first time wearing the suit, it felt like a tremendously heroic moment, because the whole crew were like so excited to see it. It was a very memorable day.
Will you ever feel that good again?
Yeah, never feel that good again. And it was. I remember as the season was progressing, I remember Joe Quesada, who was heading up the team that was designing the costume. He would show me early drawings and illustrations, and so it was it was very, very exciting. And I have British actor friends who have played Marvel superheroes, but I never thought that I was going to get that opportunity. So it's a very, very cool moment. So that was the first aspect of your question. In terms of the training, I've always wanted to play a character or to be involved in a production that requires me to really, dig deep, if you like, or throw myself into a certain aspect of the of this character. Often I've been cast as characters who are very similar to myself, and so there isn't so much homework, if you like, to do. Whereas this is not the case with this character, and of course one of the aspects was the physical training and the gym work that needed to be done. Stephen DeKnight, who was the showrunner of the first season, he called me up and said, I got cast at the beginning of May and we started shooting at the beginning of June, something like that. And he's called me up and said, I need you to put on 20 pounds of muscle. And I didn't, I didn't own a gym membership. I'd never really been to the gym. And so, I very quickly discovered that I had to eat a lot of food. Go and work out, and I got into these things called protein shakes, which apparently are very common. They're now part of my daily life, and that was kind of fun. And the martial art training, I spent time with Phil Silvera, our stunt coordinator, and Chris Brewster, my stunt double, and tried to learn as much of the, try and do as much of the fight sequences as I'm able to do. I really enjoy that aspect of the filmmaking process, so it's fun for me.
Also with the suit, a lot of superhero suits that we see in films are really uncomfortable, or have to be specially made for a certain action sequence. One of the one that we talk about a lot is in Batman Begins. There were actually places where a Christian Bale could open a place and a lot of sweat would come out because it was that uncomfortable for him to wear it. Anything like that with the suit, because season 1, like you said, was mostly just the t-shirt and cargo pants and boots, right? So
yeah,
it's a suit
that costume was the most comfortable costume in the world. This one is surprisingly comfortable, and it has evolved a little bit as fans will watch, the audiences will watch the second season.
Through the second season,
there is an evolution of some degree, and it's woven into the storyline, so that it makes sense why this evolution does happen, which I always think is really cool. One of the things I think is the hardest aspect of superhero shows or films for audiences to grasp, to get their head around, is the actual suit aspect. And one of the things that I thought this show did spectacularly well is they wove that into the storyline, so it was understandable and it made logical sense. And they've done the same thing this year with the evolution of the suit. But no, it's surprisingly comfortable. Initially it took 2 or 3 people to help me put it on. Now I can do it myself. I feel very grown up. I can dress myself. There's modifications have made it as comfortable as almost as comfortable as the black suit.
The first thing that so this is probably the one which still has the horns from the end of season 1, but it's the face mask itself has evolved quite a bit throughout. So I'm presuming that's also one of the things that. So was that also something uncomfortable, since in season 1 you had your eyes covered as well? I mean, at least from a viewer's perspective, was that something that was difficult to pull off with a mask, or was it a cheat? Because Daredevil's really, he's supposed to be blind, right? So in season 1 your entire face is covered till here.
Yeah.
Was that actually really covered, or was it a cheat?
No,
could you
it's
see
covered.
through it?
You can see the material is such that you can see through it. It's like a gauze.
Oh, okay.
So
How comfortable was
yeah, exactly.
the first helmet.
Yeah, the
I'm
first
trying to remember that. I know that the helmet that I wear, the helmet that's in the trailer, is much more comfortable than the original.
Yeah.
But that one wasn't particularly uncomfortable. There was a modification made to the lower half of the suit, or the pants. I don't know how you'd say that. Which was significantly made it significantly easier for me and Chris to do our twists and turns and kicks and stuff. So.
Thank you, guys. We need to wrap you for your next session.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.